Hello and welcome to The Swing. As always, it's your boy HK, and we are live as always every Tuesday and Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on The Swing. Sponsored not only by SportsTrends, but by Thrive Fantasy, where every day you can win real daily fantasy prizes. On Thrive Fantasy, it's a daily player props app where you go ahead and pick from a list of 10 to 20 players on every night basis to go ahead and choose whether they're going to be over and under a certain statistical measure that's given for them. So as an example, LeBron could be asked if he's going to score 28 points or not. You choose over or under. Of course, LeBron's out for the foreseeable future, so you'll be seeing other players on there. But every night you join contests, you join tournaments, and using the promo code SWING, SWING, you will have your deposit matched 100% up to $50. So definitely sign up and prop up today with Thrive Fantasy. As always, I said it's myself, HK, joined by that guy, Owais, as we go ahead and break down what is looking to be a very, I don't know if exciting is the right word for it, stressful might be the other word for it, trade deadline week. We're seeing lots and lots of potential movement that's happening, rumors that always pop up over there. And the question about which teams are going to be buyers, which teams are going to be sellers, which teams could potentially be looking to make that push towards a championship run, and which could be those that are looking at the end of their window and could be looking to instead start building for the future. But before we go ahead and talk about the future, that guy, Owais, tell me about your present. How's it going, man?
How's my present going? It's a little bit stressful. I actually have the fan on right now because I have a feeling we're about to get heated, especially considering these guys over here. But thankfully, that's not the only thing we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the Atlanta Hawks and their success over the last little bit. And I just wanted to really quickly give a shout out to one of my boys, Faraz. Faraz, we see you. He watches all the way from California. It's nice to see that you're joining in. HK, you want to say hi to Faraz as well? He was really, really excited to hear from HK himself.
Absolutely. Look, in the end, we're only as good as the fans that are joining us, and there are few people as dedicated as Faraz. So thanks very much for joining as always. And just you, like everyone else, definitely join us on the comments, ask your questions, give your feedback, really engage with us, because we expect this to be either a controversial episode, because I'm sure there are takes that are going to come up with that we just have one way or the other of thinking. Everyone has their own ideas. Everyone has their own thoughts of what they would do if they were a GM. But before we get into that, like I said, the Atlanta Hawks is our first major topic to talk about today. And much like we did last week, and much like it might be a curse, because right after we talked about the Charlotte Hornets last week and spent a little bit of time breaking down just how great they've been getting, how awesome they've been becoming, we hear about another injury that just goes ahead and robs them of what could potentially have been a playoff push for them. I mean, we could see more things going on, but despite all we talked about in terms of the depth of their roster, the capabilities of all that they have, obviously the LaMelo Ball injury is going to do big things for them. But on the other hand, the Atlanta Hawks have finally been getting healthy. Owais, 8 of their last 9 games they've won. They were on an 8-game winning streak, and that could have been extended to 9, was it not for a crazy comeback by the LA Clippers. So just Absolutely. How good have the Atlanta Hawks been?
They've been fantastic. You take a look at, it's funny. The beginning of the season, we had predicted this to be a very deep and good team. However, they were struggling, and, injuries happened. And, this is kind of like the story of this season with almost every single team. Now, when, things got bad, they had to make a decision. And that decision was to let go of their coach and hire a new one. And since that, sometimes it's as simple as that. Since that firing and hiring, the Atlanta Hawks have been on an absolute tear. They're back from their injury woes, and everybody just seems to be balling out. Now, one of the things that I want to mention in particular is just how effective you see Trae Young over here, just how effective Trae Young has been in this little stretch that they've had. But also, like, I was wrong. A few weeks ago, or maybe a week ago or 2 weeks ago, we were having conversations about teams with the rest of our friends, and Atlanta being one of the main, I guess, teams we were talking about. And I said there was absolutely no shot that this team gets back into rhythm because of just COVID and the low amount of time that these guys have had together. But now imagine how everybody coming back together, all the pieces are back, and then the coaching changes. And so now they have to create this new identity. It just seemed to work out for everybody. And I don't know, you want to comment on that a little bit more? I know you've been following the Atlanta Hawks a lot more thoroughly than I have. So what do you have to say about this little run that they've got going?
I mean, look, first and foremost, I never like to put too much stock into this idea of a coaching change just changing around an organization altogether. It's always one of those where when something goes wrong, the first guy you blame is the coach. And frankly, I think it was a bit unfair for Lloyd Pierce to go get fired when he did, just because of exactly what we've been talking about with regards to not only their injuries, but just the lack of rhythm in general. And the fact of the matter is the Atlanta Hawks are a team that have been just a bit of an enigma of themselves, mostly because Trae Young, who himself is essentially how he goes is how the team goes, he has been finding better ways to be more effective. He's actually scoring less in this last run that they've gone ahead and gotten, but he's averaging nearly 11 dimes a game in this stretch in which they've won 8 out of 9. And as a result of that, the three-point percentage has gone up quite a bit as well, just because we know how much attention, how much gravity Trae Young brings. You're seeing it right here. Like, this is exactly what we're talking about. Look at 4 defenders, and that's the Raptors. So, it's like, that was a game winner that went ahead and got us killed. So, look, 4 guys go ahead and converge right on the inside, because the fact of the matter is Trae just has so many tricks up his sleeve to be able to be effective in there. But from then on, you're able to go ahead and kick out to the open shooter. And, I mean, it's quite crazy when you talk about where teams that live or die by the three-pointer. In many ways, the Atlanta Hawks are pretty much the epitome of that to this side of the Rockets, because in games that they have won, they have shot 40.5% from the three-point line while shooting an absolutely disgusting 32% in games that they lose from 3. And it's just one of those things where Trae himself, when he doesn't have his rhythm going, and we saw that in the last game in which they went ahead and before they lost to the Clippers, the game prior to that, where Trae Young was literally on 4 points for the first 3 quarters of that game. And then in the last one, he put up 8 points, but it was about 7 dimes that he had in that time, where he just realized that, look, it's not working for me. I'm shooting like 3 of 16 and going into that, and being able to get away from it and have more faith in his teammates, especially those support guys that have come, have really helped turn around this team. I mean, we talked about DeAndre Hunter. Him coming back is huge, and these other guys as well.
Yeah, I mean, and also take a look at who you're with and surrounded by, right? Like ex-champion, or actually still NBA champion right now, Rajon Rondo. And we said that, at some point, Rondo, his IQ or, just the knowledge that he has for the game is going to rub off on Trae Young in spectacular ways. And you're starting to see it this right now, and that influence right now. Maybe not so much earlier in the season, but, that dishing and finding the guys. I mean, like, imagine you're Trae Young and you go off and you give Tony Snell, you pretty much gather up 4 defenders on you, especially on that. And I'm talking specifically about that Toronto Raptors game. And then you dish it out to Tony Snell for the better shot, right? The open shot. And do you think Trae does that before? Probably not. But it's kind of, it's great. It's great to see that a young guy like that is absolutely excited and almost adapting to what's necessary for them to win. And I think that's the important thing. And I think that's something that kind of separates you, like a superstar, from, someone who is just a really, really good player. And so kudos to him.
Yeah. And I mean, 100%, as we said, Trae Young, I still am of the opinion that it's still too early overall as far as Trae Young's development is concerned to really be looking to expect this Atlanta team to make that next level push. But that playoff experience, that capability of being able to handle the pressure when the lights are at its brightest. One, Trae Young has shown his capability of doing that in lots of clutch time situations as far as regular season games are concerned. But those reps that come with having, a game matter the most, where teams aren't going to take plays off on the defensive end, and where, you can really start to understand, even from a front office perspective, just who are the guys that you can commit to, who are the guys that really are going to be the ones that you want to ride or die with all the way through. Because we saw earlier in the season, John Collins, who is, to me, easily the second most talented guy on this team and has just so much bounce to his game and so much versatility that he has to be a big part of their future. But there were already talks about how much Trae and him were getting into it. There was friction in between how their play was. They didn't really like perhaps how one or the other's philosophy was in terms of how they go about getting some of the late game possessions. But they've clearly worked through that. If you have seen the Atlanta Hawks during this last stretch, this last streak of games, there's just so much more communication between specifically Trae and John Collins. And there are so many moments now, especially down in the fourth, where he is like hunting for John Collins. Like, he's forcing him to make that hard cut because he knows that there's few guys that are, first of all, going to be able to catch him if he goes ahead and lobs it the way he does. And Trae is actually one of the most underrated lobbers in the game. So when we talk about Lob City, this has all the potential to be that, because John Collins is the perfect recipient for it as well. But just like that, right, that kind of hunting for him, that kind of like deep push into the post, that is really what's helped transform a lot of the front end scoring for the Atlanta Hawks. And then you just get all these support guys to come through, and that's just purely health. Bogdanovich, Gallinari, DeAndre Hunter, key pieces for these guys, and they're finally back in good health. So lots and lots of positives for the Atlanta Hawks, and I'm excited to see where the rest of this streak and the rest of the season is going to go for them.
Right, absolutely. And one thing that you absolutely mentioned and hit the nail on the head with that is like that communication. I think the most important thing you can have with a team is trust. You cannot like each other. That is something that, is a hit or miss with a lot of different people in the NBA, with a lot of different teammates. But the trust always has to be there for a successful team, right? And if you see, Trae Young trusting John Collins more, look at this. You don't really do that unless you absolutely trust the guy who's with you. Hopefully they continue to communicate in the way that they're doing and understand that each person brings something that's unique to their team in order for them to win, right? So I really, really am excited for Atlanta as well. Did I think that they would ever get to this stage? No, not after the injuries and stuff like that. But, I could say that I'm basing this just purely off of just how many injuries and how that's affected, the NBA as a whole. Like many different teams have gone through it. Like you look at LeBron getting injured now, LaMelo Ball, that's extremely sad. Both of those guys getting out with injuries, and, this is all just super tragic. But for the Atlanta Hawks, this is something they can hold their head high, and they're hunting for that playoff spot. And what a time for Hunter to come back. Right, so
I like that. See, get that Hunter in there. But again, going back to that idea of that playoff spot, especially now that the Charlotte Hornets are in that problem situation where they've got some big health problems, and we're going to move into another team that has had a lot of health problems that is now potentially dealing into a situation where they could be looking towards the future. Owais, 2 days from now, the trade deadline will be coming. Is this the last that we have seen of this current core with regards to the Toronto Raptors? And I'm talking specifically about the guy who has been there for the entirety of this era, the greatest Raptor of all time, the guy whose statue will 100% be sitting outside of Scotiabank Arena, either taking a charge,
you mean
either
this guy?
a turnaround jumper. That guy, Kyle Lowry, I'll probably get tears thinking about it if the man goes, but is it time for the Toronto Raptors to make some moves towards the future? Or how do you see the best path going forward for the team?
Look, at the end of the day, it's a situation where you got to assess what's happening with your team and what's expected of the league in the future in terms of contention. Because if you want to be contenders, if that's the goal, a championship should be the goal of every single team. Now you look at like a guy like Kyle Lowry. Do you expect him to be playing at a certain level 2 to 3 years from now? Because that's pretty much where I see the next possible opportunity where we can make a serious run with this core, for a championship. Now, what does that mean with Kyle Lowry? Right now, unless we can really set ourselves up for that 2 to 3 year window in a way that maybe it's draft picks that are really, really high. Maybe there's some crazy talent coming out of the, out of the youth this year or next year in a few years. But that really hasn't bothered the Toronto Raptors because they have such a great scouting department, but also just pieces. Like, is it worth trading Kyle Lowry right now for pieces later? You know what I mean? Or pieces now that could contribute to almost a foundation, right? We have our core players, but, we've talked about some of the struggles that we have. So do I personally think it's the right time to trade Kyle Lowry? Only if the pieces we're getting back put us into that spot within 2 to 3 years, we can see ourselves being a contender. If we can't get anything out of that. So we have like a few visuals here. One of them are just kind of the troubles that the Toronto Raptors have, right? And so, it's evident the front court has been a problem. Aaron Baines has been a problem. Boucher has been scoring, but it's not really helping us win any games. And he's undersized, quite frankly. Then we talk about our bench production. Now, this is where me and HK had a pretty heavy debate recently on an Instagram Live after the loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Really, our bench is useless because they cannot score for their life. And what ends up happening then is it puts more pressure on the starters, and it almost pushes Nick Nurse to play the starters a lot more, right? And fatigue hits, injuries can happen. There's so much that goes wrong if your bench cannot play to what we expect them to do, right? And just closing quarters, that's another one that we've talked about. That's been a consistent problem. But anyway, with Kyle Lowry in mind, do I think we can realistically do something to help those issues? No, not right now. And I think that if we keep him, we're happy. I know you talk a lot about him being a mentor and this and that. So I want to know what you think about, Kyle Lowry.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, knowing what I think about Kyle Lowry is something that's of no surprise to anyone, right? Just absolutely this ultimate class act, ultimate leader, and just the kind of guy you want to go to war with. And we talk about just how fleeting team chemistry is, just how fleeting it is to be in that situation where not only do you have just complete trust over the guys that you're going around with, but also just complete and utter faith in the guy who is your leader, the guy with the keys. And like just anytime, any situation, no matter when the chips go down, that Kyle Lowry is going to be that guy to not only be bucking up his teammates, to just be pushing them all the way through, but he himself is the ultimate just lunch pail, hard hat, go. And regardless of what happens, just leave it all out on the floor. We saw that to absolute peak in that Boston series, right? Like if there was any guy that you felt just absolutely heart-wrenchingly broken for when we lost that series, it was Kyle Lowry, because you saw not only that cliche about the heart of a champion, right? The guy who is going to be there, but he quite literally blood, sweat, and tears were put onto the floor. And that's just how he's played for the last 7 seasons that he's been full-time with the Toronto Raptors. So to me, here's how I see it. Kyle Lowry's 34 years old. His game is not one that relies on athleticism. So I'm not of the belief that his game is going to be deteriorating to such a large degree over the next 2 to 3 years, which is really where you're hoping that this current other core is developing into something that can compete at the top level, plus any and all opportunities that you'll get with coming in terms of stars coming from the outside. That is best achieved with having a Kyle Lowry there to be that mentor, to be that veteran, and to be that almost godfather figure to all of these guys. And I mean, we've seen this in the past. There's been no less talk about how much Kyle Lowry has benefited the guys that are there. Fred VanVleet talks just so much about what Kyle Lowry has done for his game, what Kyle Lowry has done for his confidence. And if we see the way Fred plays now, the kind of situations that he goes ahead and looks, it's almost like he's pretty much emulated what Kyle Lowry has brought to the Toronto Raptors, and now he's looking to bring that forward, which is what brings me to my next potential idea of this. Because, as you said, if we are moving on from Kyle Lowry, it has to be in a scenario in which it would be beneficial to us in either the short term in terms of high draft picks, or a long-term deal in which we're getting guys who are coming in on solid, money rookie deals that are going to be basically helping the depth of the Toronto Raptors, and at the same time making it so that you can start to think about, hey, these are guys that we know are going to be playing for the next 5, 6, 7 years at a very high level. So then we can start to think about, okay, now that we've got that base set into place, how is it that we can then make those pivots, make those moves? And the final part of it is that we're going to be doing it by doing right by Kyle Lowry. And that is the biggest side of all of this, because regardless of what the front office thinks, regardless of what opportunities could be there, in the end, the Toronto Raptors as an organization have a very unique opportunity over here that if they are going to be going ahead and moving on from Kyle Lowry, it is going to be in a situation that, one, he wants, and two, in a situation that allows us to still keep that bridge, right? Keep that contact, keep that situation in which we do right by and give respect to the greatest Raptor of all time. And the big move that has come up and the big potential trade that has been talked about is in really one of two destinations. First of it being the Miami Heat. And the guys that are being talked about in terms of potential moves coming back would be a Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, and I'm sure some salary filler that goes ahead and ends up matching that. So whether that's Aslam. I know I was going to wait for you to say that you want Iguodala, but
Iguodala.
Those are the kind of fillers that are coming back. And look, from a franchise standpoint that's looking for the future, I get it. Duncan Robinson, 26, 2 years left on his first deal on a solid contract, and we have 2 years to determine what it is that we want to do with that. And of course, one of the best catch and shoot players in the league, which is 100% an area that is going to be of need for the Toronto Raptors.
Oh, yeah.
Secondly, it's Tyler Hero. And Tyler Hero, who obviously has flashed massive potential as far as his game is concerned. I'm still a bit unconvinced in terms of just how good he could potentially be, but he obviously has that playoff experience now, had a great finals run in the last year, played quite well in a number of those games, including a very iconic finals game in which he just snarls at the end.
That photo for you.
Not fazed by the bright lights whatsoever. So that is one potential move. Owais, what do you think about that trade in which the Miami Heat would be one of the destinations, which, by the way, Kyle is potentially linked with, and us getting those pieces back? What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, you talk about a guy like Tyler Hero, and, we've seen just uber confidence with that kid. You know what I mean? And I think that from an offensive standpoint, he has a lot of versatility to him. He can do a catch and shoot. He can pull up. He has actually some sort of a mid-range. He can slash. He's maybe not entirely, developed into his man body yet, but if you have confidence and if you have the fundamentals and you have a system and an organization, like you're coming from the Miami Heat to the Toronto Raptors, both equally fantastic organizations for development or just, success in general, right? So I think that he'd be a great fit here. Duncan Robinson is the Matt Thomas that we need, right? And he's shown over and over again that he right now is probably the best catch and shoot player and the most elite 3-point shooter, probably in the East, And so for us to pick up guys like that, especially with Nick Nurse's mentality of, we're a very 3-heavy team. And if this is going to be how we're going to be playing within the next, in Nick Nurse's hands, then they complement the team perfectly. Now, Kyle Lowry, we want to make sure he's happy. And I know he has really good ties with Jimmy Butler. Reminds me of that one All-Star interview where Jimmy Butler told the Toronto Raptors they're trash, and everybody just started laughing. It was really funny. But yeah, they're really, really good friends, and they're going to compete. They're going to be competing. They're probably one of the teams up there that could make a run this year again. And if anyone can, dethrone, quote unquote, not dethrone, but kind of compete against Brooklyn. So I like it, but do I think this is what we need right now and it's going to help us in that 2 to 3 year window? No, I do not. So I trust in Masai. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, trusting in Masai has always been a thing throughout, right? We've seen that in the end, at no point is Masai ever going to give up an asset without getting something back of at least equal value. And there is no equal value in these kind of scenarios where you're giving up not only just purely the capability and the player that is Kyle Lowry, but that you're also giving up all the feelings. There's so much attached with doing this kind of a move, which is why I said, if it was me sitting in a front office seat with the Toronto Raptors, what we're hearing all around is that pretty much this is the free agency scenario right now for Kyle Lowry. He's pretty much going through free agency in this trade deadline, even though he can't officially sign anything until the offseason. Wherever he goes now is pretty much where he's going to end his career, even though he'll probably do that 1-day contract, whatever, to sign with the Toronto Raptors to retire here, even if he doesn't stay. What I would rather have happen that gives us a little bit more, not only time with Kyle Lowry, but also flexibility, is that we look into a multi-year deal for Kyle that can be a smaller number over a longer period of time for a guy who is now in his veteran state of his career. So I'm thinking like a 3-year 50, 3-year 55, like these kind of things where you're able to deal with that smaller number coming back, which still gives you the flexibility to be able to deal with the upcoming contracts of a Norm Powell, who also is, by the way, involved in a lot of these trade talks, right? So that's a whole nother scenario, lots of moving pieces. But that, to me, not only allows you to continue to take advantage of that veteran leadership that comes with it, because these guys, again, this is the first, I would say, first real season in which not only, Fred just got signed to his big deal. Obviously, Pascal is now in the second year of his big deal, coming off a second All-NBA second year, having his struggles this year, but still. But just given how much of a shit show this season has been with regards to the COVID protocols, with regards to not playing in Toronto, with regards to having in this 9-game losing streak, all of these guys gone for 5 to 6 of those games. Like, all of these things have just pretty much decimated any momentum that the Toronto Raptors had. And I'm inclined to believe that team that went 15-9 after that 2-8 start, where everything finally started to click before everything comes back apart again, is more in line with not only what we've seen with the Toronto Raptors, but speaking more to the kind of potential that team has, because they actually beat tougher opponents in that period, that 15-9 period, than the teams they've been losing to here. Detroit losing to them twice, going ahead and losing to Cleveland, going ahead and losing to Sacramento. Now, these are games that the Raptors have had like long running streaks of wins against that we've had to lose because of one situation or another. So for me, what's important is not to overreact to that, not to take that and pretty much use that as your banner to either blow up this team or make a move that you're going to regret down the road because you decided to be reactionary over here. So if I am Masai Ujiri, I go back to what you were talking about with regards to those pain points that are there for the Toronto Raptors. And all of those can be handled or at least mitigated in making like those complementary moves to be able to go ahead and get a little bit more front court, a little bit more bench production. And that's where you come up with some of these other potentials that have also been linked with the Toronto Raptors. So do you want to talk about some of these Spencer Dinwiddie talks? Rashawn, who is spelled Richaun, by the way, Holmes. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, so right off the bat, you talk about Rashawn Holmes, and he is a bigger dude, and he plays in the front court, which is exactly what we need. It's exactly what we need. Sorry, I'm kind of stumbling on my words. But it's a completely like you said, complementary player to what we already have. He's not going to be demanding the ball or anything, but he'll be setting those screens, grabbing those rebounds, and just cleaning up for us. And that's pretty much exactly what we need right now. Aaron Baines has just not been doing the job, and Boucher is not really that great inside, and he can't really compete against these oversized bigs, right? So it becomes difficult watching. I'll be honest with you. Now you talk about Spencer Dinwiddie. Now this is a guy with a chip on his shoulder, which we've also seen has had such incredible moments as a basketball player, and his development over the years. Like each year you see him and you're like, wow, he's actually turned into something special. Now, is he elite by any means? He's shown capabilities of being elite, just like Karis LeVert at one time. So, but he also brings that defensive presence as well. Now, I know he's injured and he has to go through that, but is he someone that adds to the depth of this roster? Absolutely, because then you can build around this guy as your bench guy. The bench is something we absolutely need to find. He is someone we've seen who can also distribute. He can slash. He can shoot decently. But if you have a guy like that handle a bench mob, quote unquote, and you have guys like Boucher with him, this could be a quick paced, second unit that can quickly get you buckets and can be great on defense and in transition. And I think would be a great fit for the Toronto Raptors. Have Holmes start, and you have almost exactly what you need right now. But how are you going to get that? What do you need to give up? And you're talking about a guy like Norman Powell. Do I think the Toronto Raptors should trade Norman Powell? No, I don't. I don't want that to happen ever. But if something better comes of it, then, you're going to have to make that decision. I personally think Norman Powell's game has peaked. This is the best version, the final iteration of what you're going to see of Norman Powell. And you're going to see him be like this for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years. This is the Norman Powell. He's not adding anything.
That's pretty incredible, man. You seeing this Norman Powell, this iteration? It's
a beautiful iteration.
Best shooters in the league if you're going to go like that.
Exactly. Man. But that's what I'm trying to say is this is what we're going to get from him year after year after year. So are you willing to give up that point production, that 3-point shooting, the ability to slash and score on demand, but also play decent defense, right? And he's also a vocal guy. Look at the way that he came when Sexton came at, Fred VanVleet and said some things that he shouldn't have said. Who's the first to step up? You need a guy like that on your team. And Norman Powell is that guy. And I've always said, right now I have OG's jersey right here because, I felt like OG has been the best player on the Toronto Raptors in the last few stretches since the guys have come back. But Norman Powell has been carrying the Toronto Raptors offense as soon as he became a starter, he's the one who has been carrying the entire offense. And he is a guy that you're going to, you talk about steady Freddie, Stormin' Norman. It's a new thing. We've talked about it, but he's also a steady guy who's always storming the basket, scoring buckets, shooting well, and he needs to be kept. I don't know how we're going to be able to upgrade without giving up some of these guys. But then in that case, I feel like we should wait till free agency, right? And just ride out this season. However, even if we absolutely suck, I don't think we make playoffs. And that's okay with me. So as long as when the offseason comes, we assess, as a team collectively, what do we need in order to be successful? And if this front court issue continues, which I'm sure it will, we go upgrade that in the offseason. If the bench is something we need to upgrade, we go upgrade that in the off season, whatever it takes. And I trust in the ability of our GM, Bobby Webster and Masai Ujiri, to go get it done. And that's all it is. That's all it is. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, and look, the advantage that we have here when we're talking about players like Richaun Holmes, player like Spencer Dinwiddie, first and foremost, is the fact that their contracts are very tradable assets. So Richaun Holmes is on what is, in my opinion, the best deal in the league. Imagine paying 2 years, $10 million for a guy who's pretty much averaging 13 rebounds for you on the Sacramento Kings and being an absolute difference maker. He's pretty much forced Whiteside to not even be relevant anymore on that team just because of how much hustle, how much just dog he has in him. And been a long-time fan of that guy from his days in Philly, from his year at Phoenix. Just an incredible, incredible guy to have. Not only, you talk about that person who would go to war for you, Richaun Holmes has done that again and again and again for his teammates. So I'm really excited that if an opportunity like that does come, especially given the fact that it's a very small contract, and the Sacramento Kings, who are obviously in still that state of flux, still trying to find exactly what they want to do. They're potentially looking to move on from Harrison Barnes as well. So it's just one of those things where if we could potentially be taking back, one of their contracts that they are thinking aren't working out for them, we could get ourselves a gem like a Richaun Holmes for a highly discounted price with the opportunity to have him signed on for a longer period at a deal that's likely undervaluing him just given how much he's done overall. So definitely a really interesting piece. But that obviously will all be decided over the next 2 days. Yet again, the trade deadline is set for March 25th. And like I said, rumors upon rumors will come. There's going to be trades that look like they won't go through, and they do. Trades that look like they'd be super obvious and just nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
We've seen that. Every trade deadline is just always so unique in how it goes about it. And the Toronto Raptors, who have historically not been big trade deadline kind of either acquirers or sellers, other than the year we went ahead and got Ibaka, and then obviously the Marc Gasol trade. But by and large, we've always been in that complementary piece situation, trying to see where it is that we can go ahead and stitch up some problems that we have and leaving those big moves for the offseason. Speaking of big moves that could potentially be coming up for the offseason, though, we are hearing just so many things that are going on if this trade deadline doesn't work out. And 3 players are absolutely top of mind with that. And those are being Aaron Gordon, Victor Oladipo, and then now obviously the Kyle Lowry situation. We spoke about Kyle Lowry, so we'll move on to that. But offseason, Victor Oladipo, a guy who has pretty much been injury riddled since his absolute breakout season with the Indiana Pacers, averaging 23 points, led the league in steals that year, but had that injury in that game against the Toronto Raptors. His ACL was ruptured, just very, very sad. To me, one of my favorite players in the league, but just unfortunately wasn't able to go ahead and do that. And now finally looks like he is getting back to full health, even though his efficiency is still working its way up. But he has, in this last little stretch for Houston, been putting up buckets for them. Obviously, with Houston now changing up its tone, changing up its future, where do you see Victor Oladipo potentially going?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Who knows? I don't know, because any team can use a wing like that, honestly. Anybody. So you look at some teams that are rebuilding. It could even be like a whole Gordon Hayward situation where, a team that has a really nice, youthful, almost, establishing, that 8th, 7th, 8th seed situation, kind of like Charlotte, might pick him up. I don't know who that team might be. But I mean, he can definitely help out any team. If it's the Toronto Raptors, for some reason, Masai decides that this is the guy we want to go with our future. He'd be a great fit for Toronto too. And I think he also has that dog mentality. And I think the way that our team plays, I think it would actually complement his game. So that's a spot. But then you talk about guys like teams like even Sacramento. Who knows? Even Sacramento could use a guy like him.
Fair. The two teams that have been really linked so far with Oladipo, once Woj, obviously with his bombs, comes out.
Bombs.
The Woj bomb has talked about the Heat and the New York Knicks being the two front runners for Victor Oladipo in this trade deadline. But the thing is, the fact is that Victor Oladipo is obviously being paid quite a bit. And he is an unrestricted free agent after this year. So it's one of those situations where teams have to be thinking, one, do we need him for this run right now, or is this someone that we could potentially sign in the offseason? And two, knowing that if you try to trade for him now, you'd have to give up quite a few more assets than you would have otherwise had to in the offseason. So do you think that whether it be the New York Knicks or whether it be Miami Heats, do you think those guys are willing to give up that young player and a first-round pick that Houston is looking for with regards to Victor Oladipo?
No, absolutely not. No shot. Who are they going to give? Like, who would, Houston be like if they're giving up Oladipo? Like, what are they going to get in return? Like, what's the pick situation for Miami, right? Or are they really willing to give up a guy like Tyler Herro? Is that something that's happening? Then if that's the case, how much is Tyler Herro's value in comparison to a guy like Oladipo, right? So, I mean, if the chips, if the stars align, hey, I mean, does that make Miami a much better team? Yes, it does immediately, especially on the defensive end, which they're already great at.
Already deadly.
But having him there is just like a better version of Jay Crowder. You know what I mean? And that's a horrible comparison. That's a horrible comparison. But what I mean by that is just like another really, good defensive wing. You saw how Jay Crowder played defense in that zone like system that Miami has. So I think it'd be just a great fit. But I mean, as for New York, I don't know why they would even try to go for a Victor Oladipo in this situation, because if you're going to invest that much money into somebody, especially with a team like yours, like I would hope that injury, especially the injury situation, I don't want New York to be another dumb fire where people come in, they get injured, and it's another bad season for them. They're on their up, right? So invest in players that you truly feel like will get you to that next level. And at this point, I don't know if Victor Oladipo is that guy.
Well, in my opinion, the New York Knicks are probably in a better situation to be able to actually do some of those moves. One, because their roster is pretty much, other than Julius Randle making 18.9 million to be exact this year, everyone else on that roster is making 8 million or less. So a situation in which they'd be giving up a Ntilikina, an Alec Burks, maybe an Elfrid Payton, that will be enough to go ahead and, at least from a financial standpoint, secure what would be good enough for Victor Oladipo. So really the question then comes down to, are they willing to do that with the hope that Victor Oladipo will re-sign? And I mean, the interest seems to be there. So I actually think that's a huge front runner for me, because not only are the New York Knicks playing really well this season, obviously their defense has been the biggest reason why, but they're also a team that's just starved to make that playoff push this year. They've got their young core in Julius Randle, in RJ Barrett, right? These guys that they know are going to be part of their future. But at the same time, you want to give them as much of an opportunity to be able to get that postseason presence, that postseason exposure. It's why they brought Derrick Rose. It's why they got those kind of veteran guys on there to begin with. So to me, it's absolutely a situation where the Miami Heat are probably gunning for Lowry first. And if that doesn't work out, they may become a bigger suitor in the Victor Oladipo situation. But to me, it just feels like it's a foregone conclusion that the New York Knicks are going to be the team that Victor Oladipo goes to, but only time will tell.
Yeah, 2 days, man, 2 days. So keep posted with the Swing podcast, because we're gonna let you know what's happening every single day. And anything can happen. I'm just sometimes there's these like ridiculous deals that happen out of nowhere. And I'm just like, what's going to happen this time? And there's sometimes deals that absolutely make no sense. Like, you're thinking, like, why did this happen? And then you think, why did the Toronto Raptors not hop onto this? Like, there's a lot going on. Frustrating season for the Toronto Raptors. Aaron Gordon, I also think we were supposed to talk about him as well. Yeah. I think the front runner is Boston for Aaron Gordon. I already hate Boston as a team, so F them. And Aaron Gordon is not in my good books, apart from the spectacular dunks that he did in the All-Star games. That's it. Apart from that, you mess with Kyle Lowry and his booty, buddy, you're blacklisted in Toronto. That's fair. Then you decide that you want to go to a city like Boston. So F you, buddy. You are blacklisted for life. That is a horrible city. No disrespect to the Boston city.
Wow. I am not on board. Every host has their own opinions with all of this. I am not on board with slandering a city.
I do love Tatum. I do love Jaylen Brown. And I love Brad Stevens. I love their team.
Their on-court product is awesome.
But Boston, F you, because you're the enemy.
They beat you last year. They
did, and they played fantastic. But that's only because they're just getting so proud of themselves because Pascal played like doo-doo. If we had a decent Pascal, that series was over in like freaking 6 games, man. Come on.
Well,
just a decent Pascal.
Unfortunately, the NBA world and history doesn't work on what ifs. There's only a few things that are set in stone. And one of those things is that the Swing podcast will be on SportsTrends, not only on their Facebook page, on our YouTube page, and also on SportsTrends IPTV channel every Tuesday, every Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So until then, this was OHK. That's that guy Owais. And until the trade deadline passes, we are going to be back here talking to you Friday, 8 p.m. with the results. So definitely come in, tune in, engage with us. Talk to us about what you thought, what you think, and really where the Toronto Raptors will go, as well as other teams in the NBA. Until then, we will see you at the next one. Peace.